In October of 2017, I wrote some material saying that I thought the fact that the Steele dossier may have been used to spy on people connected to Trump's campaign was potentially the biggest political scandal in the history of this country. Today, I feel that I am totally vindicated by reading the Mueller report and proving that this dossier had nothing to back it up and that an American citizen connected to a presidential campaign, Carter Page, was spied on by a sitting administration, Barack Obama's administration, using as its chief and principal evidence an document paid for by that presidential campaign's opponent and ally of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. So this all sounds very confusing. Let me break it down for you. We know that the Steele dossier was paid for by Hillary Clinton's team. We also know that it was sourced by Kremlin agents. So the irony of this from the get-go was that we're investigating the idea of Trump people possibly colluding with Russians to get dirt on Hillary. And our evidence from that is Hillary people paying to get dirt on Trump from Russians. Do you see the circular logic and how ridiculous it is? And so when this first came out, it seemed striking to me because remember, we think that Watergate's a huge scandal, and it was. And the idea was that we had a sitting President Nixon send a couple of bumbling buffoons into a hotel and try to spy on his opponent and get documents about them. What we're talking about here is of such a greater magnitude it defies belief. We have Barack Obama using the most powerful investigative and intelligence agency in the history of the world being used to go after his political rival, Donald Trump, on behalf of the person that's running for president in his same party, Hillary Clinton. This is spying on such a greater magnitude that it has, as I've been saying all along, this abuse of the intelligence agencies has the potential to rock our democracy to its core far more than anything any foreign adversary like Russia could do, particularly through releasing emails or using Facebook trolls or anything like that. So when I initially made this claim, there were two kind of pushbacks that were relieved from people, the criticisms. The first was, well, we have no idea that the dossier was used for a Fisa warrant. We now know that's definitely true. That the Fisa warrant the dossier was used for the Fisa warrant, at least in the instance of Carter Page. Now people would say, well, but by the time the warrant came about, Carter Page was no longer with the Trump campaign. But that's irrelevant because it allowed them to do several things. One, it allowed them to maintain secondary communications and spying on anyone from Trump's campaign that would continue to be in contact with Carter Page. And second, it allowed them to get access to all of the documents and conversations Carter Page had that were still recorded, like via email or any phone calls that were recorded, etc., while he was a member of the Trump campaign. So this would be strategic in the sense you could see what the Trump campaign was up to strategically and politically, but also more in the sense that the FBI, in my opinion, this was a witch hunt from the get-go, and they were trying to get dirt on Trump in any way possible. And they used selective leaks to be able to make Trump look bad in the media. For example, remember Harry Reid, like 5 days before the election, came out and saying, oh, the FBI is investigating Trump and Russia and all this stuff. And then there were tons of leaks after Trump won the presidency, etc. This was all used to harm Trump. So the fact that he technically had left the campaign by the time the Fisa warrant went through is irrelevant. It was still used to spy on the Trump campaign, and it was still used to harm Trump. In fact, it's pretty much the nexus of what led to the Mueller investigation in the first place, which has stymied Trump up until the very day in his presidency and what he was trying to achieve. The second criticism that was leveled at my accusation that this was a huge political scandal was, okay, the Steele dossier may have been used, but there were tons of other evidence that the FBI had showing that Carter Page engaged in wrongdoing, and so the Steele dossier was just one small part of the greater whole, and therefore it's not a scandal. My argument to that was, one, that's ridiculous because this was paid opposition research that was never verified. And we know that the FBI knew it wasn't verified. Comey's admitted as such. And in fact, we know up until this very day, it's still never been verified. The serious allegations in it about Carter Page or any of the other serious allegations. In other words, it's a lie. It was paid rumors that ended up being a lie that were sourced by Kremlin agents. Anyways, to use it at all would have been a scandal in my opinion. But nonetheless, these people said, no, as long as there was other evidence. So, fast forward to now, where the Mueller report comes out. Oh, and there's one other thing to talk about. It's not just that this FISA application, the way it works is because Carter Page was a U.S. citizen, you can't just violate his rights and spy on him. So you have to go to the FISA courts and get an application. But to do that, they couldn't just say, hey, we think Carter Page or any American's just this bumbling buffoon that's accidentally stumbling around and the Russians are targeting him. No, they had to say that he was willingly engaged in crimes on the behalf of a foreign power. And if you read the FISA application, the little unredacted we can see, it specifically says, it lists Carter Page as a agent of a foreign power, and it says that he knowingly engaged in clandestine activities on behalf of that foreign power. In other words, Carter Page was a spy for Russia. That's their claim they're making. So, if it's true that for that FISA application, the FBI had all of this other evidence, then surely we would see it in the Mueller report. The Mueller report is going through everyone in Trump's campaign who talked to any Russian, and they're looking at it in great detail, any Russian that they talked to. And so, if there was evidence that the FBI had that was credible, like we're being told, oh, it wasn't just the dossier, there was other evidence that backed up the claims in the dossier, then Mueller surely would include it in this report. He would say, oh, and here were the things that we saw that led to us the FBI thinking that Carter Page likely was a Russian spy. There would be some evidence of that. Instead, what we see is, here's basically what the Mueller report says about Carter Page. It says that before he was with the campaign, that he dealt with Russians that ended up being Russian intelligence officers, but he committed no crime in dealing with them. What it leaves out is actually he testified for the FBI and helped put these Russian agents, helped them be convicted of crimes. But nonetheless, it says, okay, Carter Page in like 2013 or something talked with Russians, was basically a dupe and didn't commit any crimes. Wasn't a spy for Russia or anything like that. Then fast forward, he's on the Trump campaign. He gives a speech at a university in Moscow. He talks with some Russians. He sends emails saying, hey, it would be good for the Trump campaign to have good relations with Russia. And they specifically quote, he says it would be nice to like put an end to this second Cold War. All of that seems reasonable. That's not a crime whatsoever. That's someone who, like me, would like to see war and escalations of nuclear superpowers, and for that matter, in my case, I'd like to see escalations with any country be diminished and try to have positive conversations and diplomacy with them. That's not a crime. That's it. That's all the Mueller report has. He talked with some Russians. He expressed interest in having good relations with Russia. That's it. Now, if there were accusations, and what we're being told is, well, just because there had to be evidence that the FBI had to look, the allegation was so serious that we had to spy on Carter Page, because the allegation that he could be a spy was so serious that would damage our democracy, so we had to look into it. What's the evidence? You can't just, because you don't like the fact that he talked to Russians or that he expressed interest in having diplomacy with Russia, that's not reason to have a FISA warrant on him. That's not reason to assume he's a foreign spy. For the FBI's grandiose claim that they had proof, that they had likelihood to believe that Carter Page was a foreign spy for Russia, they had to have something more than, oh, he talked with some Russians and the Steele dossier. But and if they had that, then it would have been in the Mueller report. Now, Mueller's not necessarily going to specifically say this is the exact evidence the FBI had, but that likely information, again, we're saying that there has to be a very likely chance that Carter Page was a foreign spy in order to issue a FISA warrant on him. That's true of any American, but it especially should be true in a situation where we're talking about a campaign for presidency and people connected to him. And we know that people like Comey and Mueller and all sorts of other people have repeatedly said, when you're doing investigations into a campaign for president, you can't even have the appearance of impropriety. Things have to be done different. The threshold has to be high. Mueller, for example, in Volume 2, his report talks specifically about how we need concrete evidence before we could do things like allege that the president's committed a crime. So they know the threshold has to be very high. Yet we see nothing, not one iota of evidence still, showing that there was any suggestion ever that Carter Page was a Russian spy except the Steele dossier, which leads me back to the original contention I made in October of 2017. The FBI used paid opposition research to spy, so the Obama administration's FBI could spy on his political rival, Donald Trump, and their campaign. That is exactly what happened. If there was evidence, again, what we were being told is, well, the excuse that will be used is, well, we had the investigation, but until we had the investigation, how did we know he wasn't a spy? No, that's not how it works. You had to have credible evidence that he was a spy. If there was credible evidence that he was likely a spy, Mueller would have had in his report. And even though there's not enough to charge, here's the evidence we had that Carter Page was acting so suspiciously that it rose suspicions that he might be a spy for Russia. Instead, he talked to the university, he wished that we would have better relations, and he talked to some Russian folks. That's it. That's what the evidence is. This should outrage every single American. Again, all of the excuses we've been told. And now keep in mind, you start to see the media and the Democrats say, oh, it's outrageous that Barr or Trump say that they're now going to consider investigating the investigators and seeing what led to the things like this FISA warrant and seeing what led to the start of the Russia investigation. It's not outrageous at all. How is it that some Joe Schmo like me was able to get this right as far back as October in 2017? And it wasn't just me, there were other people. Yet the media was telling us to even look in, to even question anything the FBI was doing was hurting our country and hurting law enforcement. They have shirked their duties. The media is a joke. The Democrats are a joke. This was a witch hunt from the get-go. It was designed for the FBI and Obama's administration to spy on people connected to the Trump campaign, to smear him and make him look bad, and to get information of what the campaign was doing. And the Mueller report proves that. So, hey, I'll be putting out more videos on this Mueller report because I think it's a really big issue. Again, I think that this is the premier issue in our country. It's the biggest political scandal in the history of this country, in my opinion. And whatever your issue is, whether it be climate change, the opioid crisis, if it be the economy, if it be immigration, or stopping regime change foreign wars, whatever it is, none of it matters. Because if we allow unelected officials, or if we allow sitting presidents to weaponize the intel agencies, or we allow these intel agencies, unelected people, to dictate and try to stop anyone from becoming president that they don't like, or try to stymie their presidency or office whenever they get it, then all of those opinions on what we would like to see change, regardless if you're progressive or conservative or anywhere in between, none of it matters. Because the only opinions that matter are those of the intel agency. If any president or any congressperson dares to go against the intel agency, well, then they'll just weaponize and go after them. So this is the biggest issue facing our country right now, and we need these investigations into what was going on, and people need to be held accountable. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Like I said, I'll be putting some more material out today, and thanks. Have a good one.